Mark, when I was a CEO, I had a really hard time wrapping my head around this thing called strategy. Now, that's what a CEO, a retired CEO of a publicly listed company told me the other day when we were talking about strategy. And in my experience, this is not unusual for CEOs having difficulties thinking about what is strategy, how to do a better strategy, and what the strategy of their company should actually be. Hi, my name is Mark Snoekers. I'm a strategy advisor. I have been so for the past 20 years, working with CEOs, owners, and founders, helping them to design and implement better winning strategies. Now, so based on this discussion that I had with this CEO colleague, I wanted to record a couple of episodes dedicated to what CEOs need to know about strategy. And this is the first episode in this series. And to start us off, I'd like to talk a little bit about, so if we say strategy, what is it that we are actually talking about? Now, strategy is a multifaceted, multidimensional kind of topic, and there are different aspects and different dimensions to it. Now, the first dimension to strategy is, and what you need to think about, is the content of strategy. So if we say strategy, what strategy are we actually talking about? And I'd like to distinguish between an ecosystem level strategy. So the question of, are we going to compete or cooperate with our ecosystem? You need to think about the corporate level strategy. So what businesses do you actually want to be in? And you need to think about the business level strategy. So within the different businesses that you have chosen to be in, how are you going to compete? So that's content dimension of strategy. Next, there is the process dimension of strategy. So you have to think about how are you actually going to do strategy in your organization. And here, so in theory, in the literature, but also in practice, we distinguish a lot between intended strategy, deliberate strategy, so stuff that you have planned to do actually, and emergent strategy, so things that happen that you need to react to, where you need to take action, and these patterns of actions actually could form at some point part of your strategy. And the question obviously becomes, how can you manage and balance the intended deliberate strategy versus the emergent strategy, which I think is becoming increasingly important because our environment, or for many companies, the environment is increasingly volatile. Then you might also have to think about, as part of the process, this idea of strategic change. So how do you change and renew your organization and your strategy? And here the big tension is kind of like, are you going for a big bang revolution where you completely turn around the company like Nokia might have done with going from rubber products to cell phones? Or is it more of a continuous evolutionary kind of development of your company into a new direction, new markets, new customers, new businesses? And the third element of the process is really about strategic innovation. So that idea of how much focus are you setting on exploiting your existing business versus exploring new areas for your industry. So that's two key dimensions to think about. So strategy content, what strategy are we talking about? And strategy process, how are you doing the strategy? How are you formulating your strategy? How are you executing your strategy? And very often I find that companies tend to have one framework for everything, right? They don't tend to think too much about, okay, what levels of strategy are we talking about? And they don't think really about what is the process that we should be applying, but they rather rely on their annual budgeting process to a large extent to make strategy. And a final thing that, as a CEO or anybody doing strategy, you have to think about very personally is, as a strategist, how do you strategize? Are you someone who relies more on and believes more on the analytical nature of strategy, so kind of being very logical, deducing a strategy from an analysis that has been done? Or are you somebody who is more intuitive and is maybe more creative and really develops and makes strategy more based on gut feeling? And I'm not saying that one is better than the other. There have been lots of arguments around Strategy can't be too analytic. There always needs to be some kind of synthesis, some kind of creative element. On the other hand, if you only rely on your gut, well, the question is whether you actually can rely on your gut and whether you're going to make the best decision. So pay a little bit of attention to what is your preference here, create some awareness for yourself of how you think about strategy, and maybe try to balance both of them, both of these directions. So that's it for the first episode about what CEOs need to know about strategy. So please remember, you need to think about the content, you need to think about the process, and in the next episodes we'll dive deeper into all of these different topics that I mentioned today. So if you liked this episode of Brave New Leaders, please give it a like, comment and share. If you don't, let me know what I can do better. See you next time.